He only wanted a quiet meal, nothing more. An elderly veteran, worn but proud, sat alone in a small diner, unaware that within minutes his dignity would be ripped away. A bully spotted him, saw only weakness, and struck without mercy. But what looked like cruelty in plain sight was about to unravel into something far bigger, because this man carried a past no one could imagine, and a connection that would turn the tables in a way no one saw coming. The question is, how far can injustice go before justice strikes back? It was just another afternoon, the kind most of us take for granted. The small-town diner buzzed with chatter, silverware clinking against plates, coffee pouring into mugs. Among the crowd sat an elderly man, a veteran whose uniformed days were long behind him, but whose quiet pride still showed in the way he carried himself. His hair was gray, his back a little bent, but his presence commanded respect if anyone cared to look. For him, this diner wasn't just about food, it was routine, a familiar place where he could enjoy a meal in peace. Yet beneath the hum of everyday life, an unseen storm was gathering. Because while he blended into the background, someone else noticed him for all the wrong reasons. And in moments, this ordinary day would take a turn that no one inside that diner could forget. The diner's hum of conversation carried on, as if nothing could ever disturb it. But at one table, a group of young men laughed too loudly, their eyes locked on the elderly veteran sitting quietly near the corner. To them, he wasn't a man who had served his country, who had risked everything for freedoms they took for granted. No, he was just an easy target, someone they thought they could humiliate without consequence. It started with whispers, mocking his age, his frail hands, the way he chewed slowly. But whispers grew bolder, carried on the air like poison. One of them got up, strutting with the swagger of someone who thought the world belonged to him. He stood over the veteran, smirking down as if daring him to speak. The room grew still, a few customers glancing nervously before looking away. They had seen scenes like this before, people choosing silence over involvement. Then it happened. A sudden slap cut through the room like thunder. The veteran's glasses fell to the floor, clattering against the tile. Gasps echoed, but no one moved. The bully grinned, puffing his chest as if proving something to the world. Something cruel, something hollow. The old man's eyes, though shaken, held no hatred, only a quiet strength, the kind that comes from surviving battles far greater than this moment. But still, the sting of humiliation was heavy, and the cruelty didn't stop there. The bully pushed him back into his seat, spilling coffee across the table. "Sit down, old man," his voice dripped with disdain. The veteran clenched his trembling hands in his lap, his dignity hanging by a thread. The silence in the diner was deafening. Some wanted to intervene, but fear held them captive. Others simply pretended nothing was happening. Every second stretched longer, the injustice suffocating the air. The bully laughed again, calling for his friends to join in, circling their victim like predators. The veteran closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself, not from fear, but from a discipline carved deep in him through years of service. He knew this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every person who had ever been judged by the color of their skin, every time dignity was stripped away in the open while the world turned its head. And just when the bully thought he had won, when humiliation seemed complete, something began to shift. A man at the counter stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His eyes burned with a focus that made the air heavy. The bully sneered, ready for another laugh, but he didn't know. He didn't know who this stranger was, or the storm of power and authority that lived behind his calm exterior. The diner, moments ago filled with cruel laughter, was now teetering on the edge of something else. Justice was near, closer than anyone could have imagined. But how it would strike, and what it would mean for everyone in that room, was still hidden, waiting to be revealed. The bully leaned closer, his face twisted with arrogance, ready to strike again. The veteran braced, not for the pain, he had known worse in the battlefield, but for the crushing weight of being humiliated in front of strangers who chose silence. His dignity, his very humanity, was being tested in that moment. But then the man from the counter stepped forward. Calm, deliberate, his presence filled the room. The bully barked out a laugh. "What are you gonna do about it?" He had no idea. No idea that the man staring him down wasn't just another bystander. The veteran looked up, his eyes widening ever so slightly. Recognition, relief. A spark of something unspoken passed between father and son, and then it dropped. The revelation that silenced every laugh in that diner. This was no ordinary man. This was the head of Homeland Security, the son of the very man being slapped, mocked, and humiliated. The bully froze. His grin faltered, swallowed by a rush of panic. The air shifted instantly. Customers who had looked away now turned back, their silence heavy with shame. Authority radiated from the son. Not the kind that comes with a badge, but the kind that comes from absolute power and an unshakable demand for justice. The bully stumbled back, stammering, his voice cracking. But it was too late. The room wasn't his stage anymore. The predator had become prey, and the whole diner felt it. In that electrifying moment, everything reversed. The veteran, moments ago a victim, now sat taller, his dignity restored not by force, but by the undeniable truth that no cruelty, no racism, no slap could erase who he was or what he had given for his country. And as the son's voice finally cut through the suffocating silence, sharp and commanding, it carried more than anger. It carried the weight of every injustice that had been ignored for too long. The bully thought he had chosen the weakest man in the room. Instead, he had provoked the strongest bond imaginable, a father and son, united by resilience and authority. But the real question lingered. Would this moment spark justice only for one man? Or shine a light on the injustice countless others still face every single day? The diner never felt the same after that moment. The bully's laughter had died, replaced by silence so heavy it pressed against every wall. He was escorted out not with the swagger he'd entered with, but with the shame of someone stripped bare before the truth. The elderly veteran remained seated, his son's hand resting firmly on his shoulder. A silent reminder that dignity could be stolen for a moment, but never destroyed. For the veteran, the sting of the slap would fade. But the deeper wound, the reminder that even after a lifetime of service, his skin color made him a target, cut far deeper. And yet in that same moment, justice had flickered. Not perfect, not complete, but enough to remind him, and everyone watching, that silence does not have to win. Because this story was never just about one man in a diner. It was about the countless others who never had a son in power to step in. The countless voices ignored, humiliated, or silenced in corners of the world where cameras never roll. His pain was their pain, his humiliation, their reality. And while the bully walked out defeated, the larger battle raged on outside those diner walls. Racism doesn't end in one moment. It hides, it lingers, it waits for silence to give it power. The real question is, how many more moments like this must happen before society refuses to look away? So when you hear stories like this, ask yourself, will you sit in silence or will you stand? Because sometimes justice doesn't begin with power. It begins with courage.